Welcome to week 1 for the CDC classes. We're going to cover a wide range of ways to use CDC to cover most of the bases. It's going to be tough to try to cover everything in 6 weeks, but we'll be able to cover quite a bit. We're going to start off with this little jig pattern, and we're going to put in a collar on a CDC collar on a little jig. The same technique can work on different aspects, but we're going to work with the jig this particular time. So what I have in the vise is a size 12 jig hook that's paired with a 1/8 or 3 millimeter slotted bead. So when you put it on, if you've never put a jig bead on, you can kind of see that little slot in the on the back side. Make sure that that's going to the back and you don't put it on backwards. And that's just so that the bead can slide around the neck. The thread I'm going to be using is 8/0 and iron done. And we can just kind of get started. I'm going to start my thread right behind that bead and just work back a little ways and then back forward. You can really decide how far back it is that you want to go. Just don't go too far to the back. Next, what we're going to use is some French uni oval tinsel in gold, small. And I'm going to take my tinsel, I'm going to slide it into inside the bead. Let me get my thumb out of the way there. I'm going to slide it inside the bead, and we're going to tie it in right on top. This rib is actually going to be on the bottom. So when these things fish, they fish upside down like this. So in reality, these are upside down already. So we'll already have the rib on the bottom. And we're going to take this back to about the bend or where the hook point would be. This is a barbless hook. There's something you can do here if you really want to. We can put in a gold, we can use the oval tinsel to put in a little gold tag at the back. It's totally optional, but what you'd want to do if you want to do that is tie your oval tinsel a little further down and then bring your thread back forward. We're going to leave this little space right there to make a little gold tag at the back. So for now, we're going to bring our thread back forward. I'm just kind of showing you this option. It's totally up to you. The body is going to be flat diamond braid in caddis green color. This is the mid size. And again, I'm going to try to take it and that part wants to really curve. You don't need a whole lot here. I want to take this and try to also get this somewhat inside of that bead a little bit. And that's just to help seat the bead. Oftentimes people will use lead wire or lead-free wire to do this, and you can absolutely do that if you want to. We're just not going to do it on this particular one. And so I'm going to take this and again just wrap it back. If you want to leave your gold tag in or put a gold tag in, you want to stop your diamond braid about here or so. You can really determine how far you want this. We'll go ahead and do well, if not, then you're just going to wrap all the way back until the two pieces meet up like so. But if you want to leave it in or put one in, you're going to leave that little gap right there in the back. And I'm just going to bring my thread forward and get it out of the way. You can bring it all the way up. And I'm just going to start to wrap this or palmer the material. You want to try to keep, there's actually a flat side to the braid. If you really look at it, it's kind of hard to keep the braid flat on the hook. But the flatter you can keep it, which is dang near impossible, but the flatter you can keep it, the easier it is to rib. Now you can counter rib this fly, or you can just rib the fly. If you want to just rib the fly and not worry about the counter rib, what I suggest doing is before you wrap your body forward, take a little bit of super glue or head cement and just put a little bit right here in the center. And then what that's going to do, that's going to just glue your material down as you wrap this. Keep in mind, once that glue is on, you have to kind of move. You can't stay stagnant and really work your body or whatever. So that's an option. But that'll kind of glue it down and get you to it. Now we want to stay about a bodkin width from behind that bead. Ooh, got some fuzzies on there. About a bodkin or so width from behind the bead. I'm just going to back my thread off or bring it back, either way. So once I've got them both together, I'm just going to pull the diamond braid in front of my thread. Put a few wraps in on the front side, move the material forward, put a few wraps in on the back side, and you can reverse the material as well. That's always a good option, just to make sure it's really locked off. I'm gonna go to one of my favorite tools, fingernail clippers. So at this point you should have something that looks about like this. So we're gonna put this little gold tag in at the back. And this is just kind of it's just kind of a fun thing. And again, you can make these as small or as big as you want. Don't add them. It's totally up to you. So with the oval tinsel, it's only partially oval. So there is kind of a flat side to it. You want to try to get that flat side to lay against the hook shank. And we're just going to wrap this forward in touching turns. And then once we actually get to the body material, we're going to switch direction, open this up, and angle it at more of like a 45-degree angle, and rib the fly. You want to keep in mind, I know it's kind of hard to see that rib work with the green on there, but keep in mind as you do this, this material, the body material, the diamond braid, doesn't necessarily allow for the nicest rib work. You'll get better rib work if you take the rib the same direction. If you counter rib it, it does kind of want to tilt and twist and stuff. So that's just something you want to keep in mind. If you kind of go with the way you'd already wrapped it, and then it'll want to lay a little bit nicer. And you're looking to get 3 to 5 turns in here. It's kind of up to you. On how many you want in there. I'm going to tie that off again. Again, I'm going to fold the oval tinsel to the back and tie it off going to the back. And get my fingernail clippers in there. Cut it off like that. So you should have a fly that looks pretty close to that at the moment. Okay. So next we got to put on some CDC. This fly actually lends itself well to doing 2 things. One is just an all-round collar, just meaning that the CDC is going to encompass the shank. Or 2, what's known as a V-cut, and you can put legs on and just do it on the bottom side. There's going to be several flies we do throughout the 6 weeks that you'll get this option on. So try it. I would suggest to try it both ways on both flies. Now when you have CDC, you're going to get some really big long ones. This would be what's called extra select. And then you'll get some smaller stuff that would be more of kind of a regular size. And I don't have a puff in front of me, but a puff is essentially, it's about like this. You can see that. I know the black background and black CDC doesn't really work together very well. But a puff would be something like that. And so if you wanted to do just some legs, you could use a puff and put the legs in on the top side just by tying them in, kind of like so. So as the fly's in the water, riding underneath is your legs, kind of like this. Or you can have the collar, which is going to go around kind of like that. Before we get to that, we want to put in just basically a small little thorax. Best way to do this is actually take our thread back into the body just a little bit and put a few wraps in, kind of separating it. And now this little section right here is where we're going to put our quote-unquote thorax in. It's a pretty small thorax, but it's going to provide two things. One, some extra color that's a little bit different. And then two, it's also going to provide a prop so that the CDC opens up and splays around a little bit more and doesn't collapse quite as quickly or as fully just along the body. And this really helps. You'll see this in all kinds of flies, whether it's like a North Country spider pattern or a lot of soft hackle type flies use this, because this is essentially just a soft hackle. So I'm going to use some dubbing here, and the dubbing I'm using is this hairline ice dub in the color of pheasant tail. And this color works really well with this fly. Provides a nice difference in color. We don't need much. You can see I've got a ton on there. I don't even dub it all up. I leave all that hanging out the back on purpose so I can literally just twist a little bit of what I need, and I can pull off what I don't. So we're going to twist some more on there. That should be plenty. So now your fly should look about like that. And actually, you can just even fish this the way it is, just like that. So if you wanted to do a V-cut, this is the way you would go. You would put your thorax in. You're going to take a larger feather, and you're going to open it up. We're going to cut out the tip. Now, save this tip, because again, you could use this to do something else with. But I'm just going to show you a couple of different ways and then how it's applied. And so as you take this to put your legs in, they're going to sit just like so. So you have a concave side and a convex side. What we're looking to do is have the concave side face down into the fly. And so when you separate this, you can kind of see how I've got the same amount going forward and the same amount going to the back of the CDC, and you can see this little piece of bare stem. That bare stem is what we're looking for right here. I'm going to place it right on top of my tie-in point or directly above my thread. And I'm just going to place a couple of loose turns over. So we have something about like that. I'm going to collect and pinch the CDC barbs on the leg side or tail side, and I'm going to collect and pinch the front side, and then together I'm going to just move the CDC towards my right. And you can just go little bits at a time until you have the legs where you want them. This is a popular option. A lot of people like doing it this way. And that's it. We can tie the fly off from here, and you've got your fly in there, or a fly done. Just whip finish. I'm going to back this off. I'm going to get that dubbing out of here. If you want to do a collar, move to a little bit shorter feather. So now I've got a little bit smaller feather. It's a little bit more manageable for a size fly like this. I'm going to do the same thing. Right? I'm going to separate the back and the front, leaving about something like that up front. And I've got my little tie-in point. I'm going to turn the feather around so that I've got the back end, or you can see the big stem part that's coming out front. I'm going to tie this in backwards. Now what I'm going to do is essentially, if you can see this, I'm trying to get my fingers on the way. These first barbs, I'm lining those up at just behind the bead, because that's where these are going to start to make a turn. So I've got just this little tiny gap right up front where this is going to go, where the CDC collar is going to go. I'm just going to tie this in going to the back. You can also fold this back forward and create that V-wedge that we've talked about for a long time. We're just doing it in the opposite direction this time. Usually the material is tied in reverse of the way we're doing it here. And then you can just cut this out. Again, if you leave enough room on your CDC, you can save this, and then essentially you just turned it into a puff, or you can save it as a puff. I don't typically save a lot of materials. This is the kind of stuff I will save, whether I want to turn this into just some dubbing or whatever. There's actually a lot of uses for it, so I try to keep that in mind and don't waste this material. I'm going to lick my fingers, draw everything forward just to get it out of my way. And now I'm going to take my thread back to the little tie-in point of the thorax. Now I'm going to go back to my eye stub to put our little prop in. If you struggle with putting eye stub on, as soon as you got just a little bit started, you can take it directly down to the hook shank. We're just going to place one turn in. And then once you have that one turn in, now it's partially locked in to the fly, so you'll be able to keep tension on your bobbin. So you can see I've got tension on it. And now you can twist it, and it's not going to pull out quite so easily. And now we'll just take our time building the size thorax or prop that we want. Again, this is, sort of up to the tire how big you want that. I don't like it overly big, but I don't like it small either. I want it to do its job and help enforce these little fibers open. And that's probably going to be good. Again, you can see that it's easy just to take that off if you don't twist all that dubbing on. I've tried to emphasize that over the last few years. As long as you leave that little bit hanging off the back, you can really maneuver your dubbing on or off very easily. All right, so now we've got this all done, and your fly should look about like that. What I want to do is I'm going to take this stem and collect all the little fibers and just move them gently to the back. You got to be careful. This stem can be kind of fragile. Move it to the back. I'm going to take my thread and bring it forward right behind the bead and just place a couple of wraps in. We don't have to get crazy with the thread wraps here or anything like that. Okay. Next, what I want to do is I'm actually going to pinch this stem right here. And I'm going to take my fingers and I'm going to draw the fibers into the concave side. I know it's a little hard to see, but the concave side is pointing up right here on this feather. And so these fibers naturally want to go this way. See how easily I can just lift and pull, and they want to stand up. Kind of like so. Because this stem is so short, I'm going to get my hackle pliers on here. Again, I'm just going to gently lick my fingers to dampen them and draw everything to the back again. I've got some fibers stuck out front. If you have that, this is the time to get rid of them. Usually you can just take them off with your fingernails. But you don't want to fight, 3 or 4 individual little hairs right here. It's not worth the effort. Now we're just going to palmer this over and around, creating our collar or soft hackle. It's really kind of one and the same. And we just need, you don't have to get crazy here. 2 turns is plenty. If you want to go a little bit heavier and put a 3rd turn in, you can do that. Having a little extra on something like this is not necessarily a bad idea. Just for the fact is that, you know, these fibers are so wispy and fairly delicate that if you have a few more on here, not only can you easily take them off, but as your fly hits rocks, bumps up against twigs or whatever, or, you know, hopefully it's getting smashed by some monster trout, you're going to lose some of these, and so your fly will be effective longer if the more you have on there. But at the same time, you don't want to have so much that you're losing all the color on the inside. So that's just kind of up to your discretion. And not only that, but, you know, let's face it, not every feather is the same. Some's going to have more, longer, denser, more densely packed barbs, so on and so forth. So it's really just kind of, you're going to have to choose here and figure out what the look is that you want and what's going to work best for you. I'm going to stop my stem facing up top because that's kind of where we started. And I'm just going to gently pull forward to try to create some separation between the back of the front, the very front part of the thorax where the collar starts, and behind the bead. So you can see as I bend it forward, I get a little bit of separation. And by doing this, it makes it just a little bit easier to sneak your thread through and not trap so many fibers. 2 turns over is all you need. And I haven't even put any tension on yet. This is still all loose thread. So these trap very easily. So all you gotta do is kind of just tug down a little bit, pull everything to the back. And again, we'll put a few to the front, and we'll do the same thing again to the back. Put a few more to the front. And that's really kind of it. Again, I'm going to take my fingernail clippers to trim that out. And I know it sounds silly, but just this little tiny bit, if you start to put it into a pile, it builds up very quickly, and then you've got some CDC dubbing. And so now we have something that looks similar to this, and I know this is awfully long, and we're going to address that in just a second. You got to be careful when finishing your fly if the CDC is directly up front. It absorbs glue very, very quickly, and it will literally just lock the CDC up, and you lose much of the benefit of all these little wispy fibers wanting to move around. So a wet whip here is ideal. Just a little bit of glue on super glue on your thread. You can kind of see the beading right there, and then you want to directionally or purposefully place your thread wraps right behind that bead. Don't be afraid to come up onto the bead and let the thread slide off the bead down right behind the neck. Just pull that off. So should have a fly that looks somewhat similar to that. This is really a fairly easy little bug. I'm just trying to explain a bunch of different options and give you some ideas of things that you can do. So when this thing goes in the water and it's bouncing, it's going to kind of do this. It's going to have that veiled caddis look. So if you take it and you draw all your CDC fibers to the back, you can kind of get an idea of how long they're going to stick out the back. If you want to fish it with this long of fiber sticking out, you can. If you want to shorten the fiber, that's fine too. Take all the fiber, draw it to the back till you get just past the bend. You can switch hands so that now that you've got all of these fibers sticking out. Instead of cutting this off, use your fingernails. I'm going to take my left thumb, left index, pinch together, and just start working it until they break off. This gives the CDC a much more natural look than if you were to cut it. If you cut it, it just doesn't look very good. It doesn't look right. You're not going to have any sort of unpredictableness to the very ends of each one. You can kind of see how they have all just kind of done their own little thing just by using my fingernails. Again, if you use scissors here, I'll kind of show you. But if you come in, I hate butchering a fly, but I'm going to do it because I'd rather do it than have you do it. If you come in and trim this all out, it just, to me, that looks very unnatural. It's all the same. It's just not how, Mother Nature makes their bugs. Yes, they're very consistent, but when they're in the water and whatever, they've all got different lengths. So if you like cutting it off and you like that look, if that works for you, fine. Personally, I have tried to avoid that and just use the pinch method. And if you wanted to put the pinch method back in, you could do that by lifting up and kind of randomly taking them so that they're perfectly uneven, if that makes sense. See all that. Now you can see I've got long and short, and it's kind of stuttered around. There we go. So there you go. That's it. I know it's kind of a long video for just a short little fly, but hopefully it gives you something to practice, and you can try a few different options. Like I said, we're going to try to go in depth on some of this stuff and camp out on some issues to try to really hammer home some solid tips on CDC and using it effectively. So if you like the videos, always appreciate a thumbs up, like, subscribe, and share. If you've found this video and you're not a part of our classes over on Fly Tying for Beginners on Facebook, feel free to come join us over there. This video's just a part of those classes, so if people don't or can't make the live class, then they've got a video like this that they can fall back onto, and I try to cover as much as possible and try to predict some of the questions that may come up, and that's why you'll see some of the class videos being much longer than they need to be to tie a simple fly. So I'm trying to answer questions that I think people may ask. So but always appreciate your feedback, and as always, everybody, thanks for watching. Happy tying, and we'll see you next time for week 2.